Hi, everyone. It's Jennifer Riccio, and this is another Conversations with Really Cool People Doing Really Cool Things. And I'm here with Sunny today. Hello, Sunny.
Hello, Jennifer.
So, what I find really cool about you, and we'll put her bio in the show links, blah, blah, blah. Nobody what I find really cool about you is your ability to do relationships in a really astounding way. You have a lot, you're like a juggernaut of gifts and talents, and you do everything from, creating amazing structures for nonprofits to cohorts to about abundance to, in my verbiage, creating little churches all over the universe. And I think one of the really main gifts that you have is this ability to create really sustainable relationships. What's the secret with that? I mean, I know that's a big question, but like, how do you do that? Because most people don't know how to do that, Sunny, at all.
That's a really good question.
Thank you.
You're great at that, though.
Thank you.
Um, I think, I think the really honest answer is it's part of how I was born and the gifts that I came into this body with, right? And the learned part of it is a little bit neurospiciness, a dash of compassion, and probably a few drops of selfishness because I get something out of those relationships. Right? Like part of the reason that I maintain those relationships is that I enjoy having them. So it's not entirely selfless and out here to make the world a better place. I want to make my world a good place.
Yeah. And I think that you do that, though, in a way that is really balanced in having people understand what you're here to provide and what they're here. Like there's a balance in that self awareness, not selfishness, that I think most people lose when you're conducting or when you're in relationship. Wait, let's go back for a second. So, a lot of people use this word neurospicy, and I think most people don't know what that means. So, can we
Yep.
describe what neurospicy means?
Yeah. So the technical term is neurodivergent, but that implies that people are diverging from a norm. And I prefer the term neurospicy because I think it acknowledges, and we use language to limit things and help us understand them. So I think neurospicy is a way of helping us understand that some people's executive functioning and the way their brain works is just a little spicier than other people's, but it is a spectrum. And by calling it neurodivergent, we're establishing this sort of baseline in society. That means everybody else is different than that. And I don't think that's one, accurate, or two, fair, appropriate, it's ableist, all that fun stuff. So um, that's why I use neurospicy. And it's becoming a lot more popular in the vernacular too.
Yeah, and I think what you're also really good at is really meeting people exactly who they are, where they are energetically. And I think that is also what you bring to relationships as well, right? Is that you really approach every person as an individual energy segment and linked to the whole, but it's you don't see whole first and then the segment. And I think that's really important because I think most of us lump people into categories, right? So our little left side of our brain can go, oh, this is what we know about that. And this is the pain that we have around that. And this is how we should react. And we're so busy trying to keep us in the illusion of safety that we are missing a lot of goodness around relationships. And what I think you do is you don't have that filter, which I love. And I think that is also part of how you're made up. But you also provide a lot of insight about losing that filter and having people lose that filter. So, how would we go about losing that filter of putting everyone into little boxes?
It starts by not putting yourself into those little boxes, or at least acknowledge. So, and here's the thing though, the boxes are useful until they're not, right? So, like, I went on a whole journey for a chapter of my life and figuring out what boxes my sexual identity fit into because it helped me identify within a particular community, within a sub community, and find people who I could really closely relate to. And now that that's clear for me, I hardly ever use those labels because then they start to limit me in a way which isn't useful anymore. Right. And I think that's where a lot of us get twist tied turned up, is that we figure out a label and then that like becomes the thing all the time. Right. So, um, yeah, I think it starts with understanding ourselves, what labels work for us and when they serve us and when they don't, right? Like I would suggest that every person, regardless of who you're attracted to, go down the rabbit hole of figuring out what your sexual identity is. There's a whole world of language out there that describes how you like to be intimate with people, and understanding it to then understand yourself better can really open up how your intimacy looks. And I'm not just talking sex, right?
Right.
I'm talking just general. But then once you've done that exploration, like clinging to that as part of this like massive part of your identity may not serve you, right? Then it kind of moves to the background where it's there and you can pull it forward if you want to talk about yourself in that way or research yourself and explore yourself in that way, but it's not part of your everyday vernacular and how you like lead with your identity. So it's like an ongoing exploration. And that's what I strive to create spaces for people to explore, right? Is who are you in this moment? What labels serve you? What don't? And what do you want to choose to play with today, this month, this year, in this moment?
Yeah, because then they have a lot more resources, right? If you only have two colors in your box of crayons, it's going to be a pretty boring picture rather than, the 64 crayon box, right?
Yeah.
I, you
And
know,
what's funny, I'm sorry, the fact that you use that analogy is really funny because there's a guy who's an expert in color and he suggested that the Crayola folks change the 64 colors. And he does this whole diagram showing how the current colors are actually really close to each other and
yeah,
are not providing as much diversity as it could. So even within the Crayola example,
right.
we have to be mindful of like somebody told me I had 64 options, but is it really six
Yeah.
that are
I,
under different like
I totally agree because when I started painting, watercolor painting, I'm like, well, first I started with color pencils. Okay. You have to see all the color pencils I have. And I'm like, why are these all the same fucking colors? Like, I keep buying pencil. I'm like, yeah, this is the set. I have like this. Look, these are the yellows I have. Yellows. They're all the same color yellow. Right. And I'm like, I keep searching for like that thing where it's unique. And then I started painting, and someone went, well, you can mix your own paints. And I was like, I could mix my own paints. And I think that's what you're really good at. You're really good at helping people mix their own paints. Right.
thank you.
And you're welcome. And really find that sweet spot of tapping into all of that essential nature and coming up with the formula, not to put anybody in a box, but really to utilize their power fully and completely.
Yeah, I've started playing with a new model with one-on-one clients in the past year or so. It used to be that I would hold back and not necessarily share with them everything I saw for them because I didn't want to like impose my view, right? But recently I've started asking for consent and then doing that. So we have a life mapping session where they tell me all the things that they wish and they dream and that are too big and too scary. And I synthesize all of that into this is a possible map and what your life could look like in however many years, however many months from now, what I see is possible for you.
Hi,
Okay.
Kitty.
And here are the steps that you would take to get to that possible future. And then they get to choose like, oh my gosh, this feels so good, but this part feels wrong or scary or not quite right. And we fine tune it until we have a future that they want to live into. And then, I strive to create spaces to support them in that. But that switch of like asking for consent and then just sharing what I see as possible has been really powerful, both for me because I get to be fully expressed and for the client because they get to see this future for themselves with all the labels stripped away and with all these new possibilities and sometimes new language infused into it. And that can be really, expansive. So it's been really fun and juicy.
I love that. So if people want to like get on board with that mapping session, how do they find you, Sunny?
Wildflowerstrategy.com.
Love that. What do you want people to remember from our conversation today? What do you want them to take away?
The only person defining you is you. It's that
Mic
simple.
drop. Yeah. No, I think that's really important. And I think also to notice that is also how are you defining the world? How are you defining your external? Because that's an indication sometimes of your internal for people who can't get there. Like,
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge too that like for certain bodied people that might feel like a really impossible statement. And I work with lots of different bodied people, and I would assert that there is still a path for you to define how you want to be seen in the world, regardless of what systemic stuff is telling you you have to be.
right,
So I just
right.
want
No,
to
but
acknowledge that too.
yeah, not what people are telling you, but what you're telling other people is a great way. That's what I meant, right? Like,
Hmm.
how am I defining that person over there? Right? And how is that linked to my internal definition? Because I think that tends to be a reflection of ourselves as well. And I think most people don't recognize that. But when you start to pay attention, then you can go, oh, this is my internal thing. I'm just extending it. I love that.
100%.
Well, I want to thank you so much for playing with me today.
Always.
Everyone, this is Jennifer Zoom. Conversations with really cool people doing really cool things. Sunny's bio and website is in the show notes, so please reach out to her because you won't be sorry. All right, everyone. Bye for now.